Hello, film fans. Welcome to All the Film Things. I'm your host, Elizabeth. Thank you for listening. If you're enjoying this podcast, please leave a review and a rating. Also follow All the Film Things on Instagram for updates and more film things. Today, I am talking with Kim Krizan. Kim Krizan is an Oscar-nominated writer whose work has been resonating with people around the world for 3 decades now. She wrote her master's thesis on Anais Nin, which attracted the attention of Richard Linklater when she auditioned for his film Slacker. The two became frequent collaborators in the 90s and 2000s, as she also starred in Dazed and Confused and Waking Life. In this time, she co-wrote Before Sunrise with Linklater and the story for Before Sunset, for which she not only earned a WGA Award nomination, but also an Oscar nomination for Best Adapted Screenplay. Her creative writing expands beyond the world of film, as she has also written a comic book, as well as 2 books, Original Sins, Trade Secrets of the Femme Fatale, and Spy in the House of Anais Nin. Aside from her work on and for the big screen, Kim has been teaching creative writing since the 90s by teaching around the world and at institutions, formerly at UCLA and now at El Camino College. In 2021, she launched the Patreon channel called The Magic Hour, a virtual writing class accessible to people around the world who want to gain the inspiration to write and tell original stories. We will be talking more about The Magic Hour later in our interview, but go to patreon.com/Kim Krizan to learn more about Kim's creative writing lessons as well as membership options. Kim, thank you very much for joining me today.
Oh, it's my pleasure to be here, Elizabeth. Thank you for inviting me.
I'm so happy to have you on. I've been looking forward to this for a few months now, so I'm thrilled the day has finally come to talk about your work, which includes 2 of my absolute favorite films. So I want to get going right away. Through preparing for this interview, I've learned you are a true artist who admires and researches art of all forms, including but not limited to poetry, statues, and of course, film. So I'm curious, how did you first fall in love with cinema?
Oh gosh, that is a good question.
Thank you.
I don't think anyone's ever asked me that. You know, when I was a kid, there was something, a show every Sunday called I believe it was called the Children's Foreign Film Festival.
Oh, cool.
And as I was often by myself in the house, and this was well before computers, I would often watch these children's foreign films. They weren't always that child-friendly. Some of them were a little bit more sophisticated, but they were from around the world, and I found them so intriguing because they were very arty films.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes they had subtitles, but I remember being greatly intrigued by the different sorts of storytelling. And then when I got a little bit older, I was babysitting some kids on the block one day, and the movie East of Eden came on television, and I watched it, and I was absolutely blown away by East of Eden. It starred James Dean. It was made in the 50s, and so I was seeing this decades later when I was maybe 12 or something like that. But I loved the movie so much. James Dean was amazing. I went to the library and I got the book, and then I read East of Eden, which is a Steinbeck novel. So I think those are probably my introductory experiences with film.
What were some of those foreign art films that you gravitated towards as a kid?
You know, I can remember a title. One of them was called Sundays and Sybil. And I don't remember what country it was from, but that's the only title. I can just remember these impressionistic scenes that, long scenes with all kinds of impressionistic visuals, but not a lot of dialogue. And let me see. Gosh, I just can't remember titles. I remember there was some British, there was some French. So very, very artistic in my view. Coming from America, these were far artier than we would have had in America.
Yeah, European films are really beautiful, from Bergman films to Wim Wenders. I mean, Wings of Desire. That's so cool you got to watch these films from an early age. That's incredible.
Well, and you just mentioned Wim Wenders. I saw that in the theater. And at that time, I think this was before I was in any way involved with the film world and Linklater. And I remember at first I didn't quite get the Wings of Desire. And I know I needed to see it again. So I saw it twice. I think this may have been over the course of months or something. I saw it twice. And the second time I saw it, I got it and got in the groove of it. So I really do like a good European film.
They're really beautiful films, and they're very passionate. Like when I was rewatching Before Sunrise and Before Sunset, they're so passionate, both in between the characters themselves for each other and the writing itself, that it just seeps into the audience and makes them passionate as well. I was thinking about Wings of Desire and the work of Pedro Almodovar when I was going through and thinking about the Before films. So they have a little bit of that European magic, European films, those art films, which is really incredible.
Oh, I love hearing that. That's high praise. I do think I kind of have European sensibilities, and I know that Richard Linklater does as well. Not that we don't love a good American film with,
of course,
but with the plot that is very, very, tight. But we both, I think, have those European sensibilities.
As someone who loves older films and, as previously mentioned, wrote a book inspired by the glamorous femme fatales of old Hollywood, how did the classic style and just beautiful writing of old Hollywood films inform you as a writer?
Oh, I really enjoy the whole history of Hollywood. It is so old. The film art, they had invented the technology in the late 1800s, but the art of it started taking off in the early 20th century. And I love that entire history. There's a wonderful book called An Empire of Their Own, which talks about the history. And then there was recently a little series on Netflix called Titans, I think it was, about the history, which totally fascinates me because I love early 20th century history. But the thing about those old films, and I'm thinking like films from the 20s, maybe sometimes earlier, but they were silent films, and they were drawing greatly from theater because the art form, it was still forming, so they were drawing from theater. But boy, a film such as Pandora's Box with Louise Brooks, it is utterly gorgeous, visually just gorgeous, and hard-hitting emotionally. So I was watching those films before I knew Richard Linklater. I was watching those and loved the emotionalism of those movies. The drama can be absolutely incredible. And then when we get into the 1930s, I absolutely adore Shanghai Express with Marlene Dietrich, and it is just so gorgeous. And it draws from the whole femme fatale archetype, with the woman being a source of tremendous power. And then when we get into the 40s, I really love those noir films. Like my all-time favorite is Double Indemnity, which
brilliant film.
Oh God, it's so brilliant, and the story is great, the acting is great, the direction is great. It's just all around fantastic. So I really do appreciate a good older film, because if you can understand the context, and that is you don't judge it based on our morality, our current morality, and you just are able to sink into their circumstances and enjoy the story instead of judging it, then boy, it's just such a rich experience to watch old movies.
It really is. There's something just so classic about them. I mean, when you say Double Indemnity, the banter is just beautiful. It's poetry, the back and forth between the two of them. And I think of Casablanca as well, just utterly classic and very formative for cinema.
Yeah, you're right. And that, I think that that was the style of the time, that witty banter.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, Billy Wilder and Raymond Chandler were basing the script based on the James M. Cain novel. And God, I mean, I think Billy Wilder was really a master of that kind of quick, comedic snappiness. I love him.
He made a string of masterpieces. The Apartment is one of my absolute favorites of his as well.
So wonderful. He's so wonderful.
As I mentioned, you famously co-wrote Before Sunrise with Richard Linklater, which you've said is based on the connections you've made with others during your solo travels in Europe. Have you found that the Before films, particularly Before Sunrise, have risen in popularity over the years because people today romanticize a simpler time before the internet and social media changed the way people communicate with one another?
It is true that the film has lasted, which is really funny because when it first came out, it was a tiny little independent movie. It was a very low budget movie. And while people really liked it and it got great reviews, wonderful reaction, I don't think people knew it would last. And like between you and me,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I had and all your listeners, I had a meeting at that time with like a business sort of person in the film business. And I remember he sort of said, he looked at the numbers coming in, meaning how much money it was making. Mm-hmm. And he disparaged it a little bit to me. And he said, it didn't make that much money this first week because, they make such a big deal about how much money a movie makes the first week. And he said, it's okay, whatever. I mean, it's not that big a deal. And I remember thinking to myself, gosh, if you base everything on something like that, that's not really thoroughly accurate. You have to let things play out over time. Absolutely. And the funny thing is, as time went on, I sort of started hearing, this is well before I was on social media, I sort of started hearing that people were kind of talking about it. Mm-hmm. And then when I got on social media, I was such a latecomer to that. I was surprised that people were really interested in it and talking about it. And I thought, gosh, why? And people said that they were so entranced by this time before before the internet, before we could connect with one another the way we do now so easily. And yeah, I mean, they are romanticizing the pre-internet. But the other thing is that I think that Richard Linklater and I were just the sort of people to an extreme back then who just liked sitting around and talking. Mm-hmm. And so maybe it's a slice also of our personalities because we had, everybody sat around and talked back then. People did that for fun. They would go on walks and talk. They would sit around at night and talk in the dark, But he and I were really, we were really into that because he was a big reader and I was a big reader. And, we were always going, well, what are you thinking about these days? Or what are you reading right now? What are you, And so it's partially us and it's partially the time. I
heard, it's sad that the business side and the the first weekend is so dominant of one's opinion of a film, especially in the film industry. But your film was championed by Robert Redford. He opened the film at Sundance, so that must have been quite encouraging for the film.
When we got to Sundance, we were told that he would give the introductory speech before the film was shown in front of a large audience.
Mm-hmm.
And we were told that this was a big deal. He had not done it in 6 years, is what we were told.
Wow.
And whoever told us this said that it was because he really believed in our film. And I don't remember exactly what he said, except that the general idea was that it was very positive, that there should be more movies like our movie that had hope and sincerity. And, I had grown up on Robert Redford.
Mm-hmm.
When I was a kid, if there was a Robert Redford movie in the theaters, my mother popped popcorn and we got in the car and went to the drive-in, and that was it. Because he and a few others, the few other iconic people were what would get my father out of the house and in the movie theater, basically.
Yeah.
So I grew up on Robert Redford. He was an amazing human being.
Yeah, he really was. He's one of my favorites as well. And for him, especially as such a monumental figure of the new Hollywood era, to be championing an independent film, especially, as you say, for the first time in years to introduce a film, that must have just been tremendous. Especially, it was your first film that you were making. To have that confidence through him is really amazing.
I did not realize how lucky I was, because I met Richard Linklater while auditioning for the movie Slacker, and I had never acted before. So he asked me about myself. I told him I was working on a master's thesis on the diarist Anna Eastman, and then he gave me a part in Slacker. But after that, he kept asking me if he could read my master's thesis, and I finally gave it to him.
Mm-hmm.
And then after I gave it to him, 2 days later, he asked me to write a movie with him. And I told him I had never written a movie. And he said, "It doesn't matter. I read your thesis. I can see that you can write." And I said, "Well, what do you want to write about?" And he said, "A boy meets girl." And that's all he had. And so we met, and I told him that I had noticed that he liked these very finite, tight time frames for his story. And I told him that I had traveled by train and had met interesting people on the train. And he said, "Great, that'll be our template." And so when we wrote it, he said to me, "Let's think of this as an ambitious failure, because scripts hardly ever get produced." And of course, I didn't know anything about that side of the business. Mm-hmm. And I wanted the film to get produced, but when he said, think of it as an ambitious failure, I accepted that. But, amazingly, we wrote it in the spring of 1993. It was shot in the summer of 1994, and then it came out at Sundance in, I think it was late January of 1995. So I had no idea how lucky I was.
The time frame from filming to its release at Sundance is pretty quick. I'm stunned it didn't take so long for the film to be edited.
Yeah, it was fast. I mean, as I remember, so I went to Vienna to visit during the set, which, writers don't often get invited onto sets because their work is done. But I did visit the set during the filming, and the editor, Sandra Adair, was working on the editing during the filming, and I went to the office and sat with her and Rick while she was working on things. And I remember seeing a number of cuts of scenes and, Rick saying, "Yeah, I agree with you, Sandra, that scene looks good. And, I agree with you that we should cut right there." And so she was on it during the filming, which is probably why it was out so quickly.
Yeah, it must have been. That's very quick. I would have thought it was a year. I didn't realize you were filming in the summer of 94.
Yes, I remember it was the summer of 94. It was during Rick's birthday because I remember the chocolate cake that came out. I think
Ooh.
it was the end of July is his birthday. Let's see, it was 94, so he's turning 34 years old. And the cake came out, and I remember we were sitting around eating the cake, and I think we may have even been eating it while the three of us were sitting in that office looking at the cut, if I remember correctly. So, yeah, it was all very quick. And, Sandra was like an absolute professional. So she knew what she was doing. We were in good hands.
You both wrote the script in about 2 weeks, which is also quick but incredible. You would take turns writing with each other while one was pacing and one was putting their thoughts on the page. In the film, Jesse and Celine, they have this one night together and they think that's it, or at least they don't think about seeing each other again towards the end of the film. Did you think that process of taking turns was better because of how personal the characters are talking about? How do I word this? The personal topics being discussed between the two characters. Was it easier to take turns and just write it solo on the page before each of you saw the responses? That's a terrible way to word the question. I hope it makes sense.
No, go ahead. Give it another. Just keep going. Okay. Keep going.
Okay. So in the film, Jesse and Celine are able to say how they feel about each other through a fake phone call with their friends at the table. This is later in the film, but even throughout the film, they're talking and they're sharing so much about each other because they think this is the one time they're seeing each other, the one night they're spending with each other. You and Richard Linklater would take turns writing on the page. One would be writing, one would be pacing. So was that easier to do instead of talking about it because of how personal this script is for you both? I hope that's better.
What we did is when we first got together, we brainstormed and we came up with a loose outline of what we thought people would talk about over the course of an evening as they're getting to know one another and they like one another, they feel an attraction. So we did have a loose outline, but then when it came down to actually writing the scenes, we would take turns sitting down. He had the computer at that point. I did not even have a computer when we wrote it in 1993. So at that point, we were in his apartment and one of us would sit down and type something out, and then the next one and the other one of us would be pacing around or in the living room. And then we'd finish, and then the person who was pacing would sit down. So it kind of came off like a natural conversation at that point. We were generally following the sort of the outline that we had come up with that was, by the way, pinned up on the wall over the computer. But I do think that it was like we were having a conversation on the page.
Yeah, it shows through the characters. And Before Sunset was a different writing process. Instead of within a month, it was over the course of a few years. How did the process for writing this sequel go? Because they seem seamless between one another. So it's incredible that it feels that way, even though it has been 9 years.
Well, I'm glad it seems seamless. So Rick and I got together, and once again, we brainstormed what could possibly have happened to the characters. And so I believe it was Rick who came up with the idea that the male character had written a book about the experience. He wanted to be a writer. And that does ring true for Rick, because I believe he did want to, he was a voracious reader. And so becoming a writer probably was one of his youthful ambitions. So he has the male character become a writer. And I remember we did quite a bit of talking about it. But in the midst of this, I moved back to Los Angeles, where I was from, because I had been living there in Austin for a long time. So at that point, Rick and I were, communicating mainly via phone or email, but he was very busy with other projects. And so I took the bull by the horns and did a lot of work on the script at that point. And I remember Rick really had limited time. Then the actors wanted to become a part of the writing process. And so they got involved in the writing then. And what they ended up doing is using much of the first act. If you notice, the film is quite short.
80 minutes.
Yeah, it's short. And that is because they took the first act and they contributed, some of their ideas to that first act that I did not have in there. Thereby, getting to the point where they could get the writing credit. This wasn't the happiest for me because I had done so much work and I'd done a lot of preliminary foundation building. Yeah. But that it ends up working. It's pretty, as you can see, it's much like Before Sunrise. It's kind of deals with a certain number of hours. In my script, had expanded beyond, and I wanted to sort of blow up the idea of a quick interaction, and I expanded it, but they ended up deciding that they liked the quick interaction. So I'm glad it seems seamless to you.
Oh yeah, I can't think of a better first film to a sequel than Before Sunrise and Before Sunset. I do sometimes a marathon of these films, and it's incredible, especially considering that two people were added into the writing process, that it was able to be so seamless from one another. But the next film, Before Midnight, was a little bit of a departure. There's a lot of similarities, but it's not very much like Before Sunrise and Before Sunset. So you were credited for co-creating the characters for the film, but when it came time to make the film, were you invited to work on the script or the story?
I was not involved in the third movie at all. It uses the characters that Rick and I created. Obviously in the first film, those characters are based to a large degree on Rick and myself. I was not in any way involved in the third movie. It went in a direction I was not really loving. And so I don't feel like there's I don't feel that character the female particularly Celine, I don't feel connected to the direction the character goes in, and that's the direction that specifically the actress Julie wanted to take. So I did not want to be involved in that one.
Okay. So did you know that a third one was in the works before it was announced?
Pretty much. I mean, pretty much, but I didn't know the detail.
I see. Okay. We're recording this episode on the day the 2026 Oscar nominations are revealed, which means many artists working in film woke up today and became first-time Academy Award nominees. You earned an Oscar nomination back in 2005 for co-writing the story of Before Sunset. So could you take me through how you found out about your nomination and how you felt leading up to the big day?
Oh, that's a great question. It's so bizarre. That morning, I woke up in the dark. I don't know if I had a little psychic flash or what. I was not in any way expecting anything. And I woke up in the dark and I turned on the television, which I never used to do ever. And there, the announcements were being made and they said my name. And I remember I was sitting in bed and I remember kind of jumping and being like, what? And immediately my phone started ringing.
Oh my gosh.
So I really, really was not expecting it. The phone started ringing. I couldn't believe it. I really couldn't believe it. It was shocking. The most fun part for me ended up getting this dress. So let me tell you about the dress. I mean, it's such a thing to get the dress. And at first I went to a department store and, that didn't quite work. And then I ordered something off of eBay and that didn't quite work. And I was driving down the street one day and I saw a wedding dress store and there was a wedding dress in the window, quite simple, strapless, satiny. And I thought, oh my God, could they make that in a color? And so I slammed on the brakes and ran into the store and yes, they could. And those people, they were such professionals and I had my red strapless dress. But then at the Academy Awards, I was on the red carpet and there were a lot of us, walking into the auditorium and someone stepped on the back of my dress and I turned around. It was Alan Alda. And as I turned around, I looked down at his foot and his wife whacked him because she saw that he had stepped on my dress, which was so funny. Yeah. And he apologized profusely. But then Pierce Brosnan's beautiful wife came up to talk to me about my dress. But I'll have to tell you, you will appreciate this completely, Elizabeth. As a fan of film noir and, great 1940s films and old school movies, I saw Mickey Rooney right ahead of me. He had been married to Ava Gardner, who was in The Killers, which is a fantastic noir film. Yeah. He was right in front of me. And I thought, oh my God, even though Ava had been dead for maybe 15 years or so, I thought, oh my God, I'm 1 degree of separation from Ava. And it was lovely. It was a lovely, just a beautiful, beautiful night. And it was so interesting to see people in person because, some people are much tinier than you think they'll be, and some people are much taller than you think they'll be. So that was very interesting, but it was lovely and it was a total shock. I had no idea it was coming.
I want to see this red dress. I hope you have pictures.
I do. So you know what? I have posted them on my Instagram before. I will post a picture this coming, during the day, on the day or the day before, something like that. I will post pictures and you'll see my dress and you will know that it's really supposed to be a wedding dress, but I asked them if they could make it in red for me, and they did. And so I wish that store was still there. It's no longer there. It used to be on Robertson Boulevard in Los Angeles, and it's not there anymore. But I advise if anybody out there needs a very fancy dress and you're having a lot of trouble, go to a wedding dress store and just ask them if they can do one of the simpler dresses in a color for you, because boy, they know how to snap those things into action really fast at wedding dress stores.
Did you tell them you were going to the Oscars?
I did. I did tell them I was going to the Oscars. And they, what they did is they made a big wrap for me, a big long satin wrap that was in the same fabric as the dress. And they did it, just out of the goodness of their hearts, because they wanted me to it was, it's winter, it's kind of winter time. Yeah. And so, they thought I would be cold in my strapless dress, but you'll love this. So the earrings I wore, I got for 25 cents. At a garage sale. And they're these 1950s clip-on earrings that I had for many, many years. I got them in at a garage sale in Austin because back in my old 1990s days, I got lots of my clothes at garage sales because I just didn't have any money back then. And so I thrifted, I did the whole thrift shop thing that they're getting back to now. That's how I got most of my clothes. So I wore these little 25-cent earrings, and they're rhinestones, and they look great.
So 25-cent earrings hit the red carpet on the Oscars night. That's amazing.
Isn't that hilarious?
I love that.
I know. People are wearing, like Tiffany's and stuff on the red carpet. I had my 25 cents. But that's, to be honest, I mean, I like doing things like that. I like kind of the 90s. The way in the 90s was we did not have money, and our values were kind of different because we didn't quite have the materialism thing going on back then.
Yeah.
And so, while of course I wanted my fancy dress because the other dresses had kind of failed, when I got home and I looked at them in the mirror, I was like, oh no. But so I had my nice dress, but I wasn't going to, I was perfectly happy with my 25-cent earrings.
And I bet they look stunning with the red dress.
Yes, it all came together. And when I had my hair, so somebody, a professional hair lady, offered to do my hair for free, because she said it'd be such an honor for me to do hair for the Oscars. And she said, "What do you want?" And I said, something like Ava Gardner would have. And then at the Oscars, I see Ava Gardner's first husband, Mickey Rooney.
Oh my gosh.
So, it all came together. It was really fun.
It's almost like a manifestation. I love that.
Yes, a manifestation is a good way to put it.
Congratulations. 2026 marks 5 years of your writing sanctuary, The Magic Hour, on Patreon, where you create lessons and share advice to writers who hope to expand their creativity. Can you talk more about what The Magic Hour is and why you call it a writing sanctuary?
Well, because I got on social media and started connecting with people, especially people who really loved Before Sunrise and Before Sunset as well, people would ask me for writing advice. And I found myself typing out all these long answers in the DMs. And then I realized that I could probably create a little, a safe little spot to house my advice. And so I checked into the Patreon mode of doing things, and I realized I could create my own little sanctuary there. I call it the Magic Hour because when I'm really, loving writing, I feel like I get into this fantastic mode that's super fulfilling. It feels safe. It feels free. Oh, I love the feeling of freedom.
Yeah.
And so I thought it's like the Magic Hour. It's like this moment that you get into that feels so transcendent. So I decided to call it the Magic Hour and just direct people there so that for the price of a cup of fancy coffee at Starbucks, they can have access to my advice, my little videos, and people are telling me that it's kind of opening them up to their creativity because, in all honesty, Elizabeth, I didn't go to film school. I was an English major, and I told you the story of writing with Richard Linklater. I did not have the traditional approach, and so I came up with my own methods for writing, and these methods now have been tested on my students. At this point, I've had thousands of students, but I've tested my methods and they work. So I just do for others what I figured out for myself, through blood, sweat, and tears. I figured out for myself. And people can go on the Magic Hour, which is patreon.com/Kim Krizan, and there it is, very inexpensive. They can have access to my writing advice.
Yes, you've given great advice. I've been going through, and I love your social media videos about it, these little teasers that you do. And some of the advice you give is you encourage people to write in private and to go inward rather than looking outward. And I think that's really incredible and helpful to many. I think that's quite powerful advice.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm a big believer that the creative person should not go to everybody and their dog and ask what their opinions are, because, if you think of someone like Van Gogh, the painter, he just didn't receive the kind of positive feedback from the world that, maybe one should think he would get. But guess what? Now his paintings sell for many, many millions of dollars on auction. It's like he fulfilled himself. And I believe that creativity is, it's something we do within ourselves to create meaning for ourselves. And it's really wonderful if the world gets it and if we have people giving us pats on the back. But that's not the original point of it. The original point of it is for us to feel that our own lives have meaning and that we've created something for ourselves to understand life and understand what we go through. So I think people are really freed up when you tell them to just work in privacy, especially at first, because they'll find their true voice that way.
It's very helpful advice, and going to a lot of people for different advice, there's so many different opinions, and it could adjust the story that you're trying to tell. And you're right, it seems more beneficial. You get to tell your story and then get the advice later on.
Absolutely. And then the other thing to know is that some people will get you and some people won't.
Oh,
and
absolutely.
That's a hard lesson to learn, but some people are going to love, your script, your art. Some people are going to get you and some people won't. That doesn't mean there's anything wrong with what you do. It's just that, there are all sorts of tastes out there. It's subjective. Some people don't like Before Sunrise. I think it's deathly boring and like watching paint dry on a wall, which it doesn't hurt my feelings in the least, because I figured out a long time ago, I have my taste. I know how I feel about the movie, and I'm very, very fortunate that other people have told me wonderful things, such as yourself, but that's not the point of putting it down on paper. It could very easily have been, like Rick said, an ambitious failure. And that would have been fine because we would have had a fulfilling experience just trying. It's all about the trying in life. So I'm really big on that with my students because that frees them up.
It does free them up. And Before Sunrise was absolutely not a failure in the slightest, because people are still championing the film today and are still quoting it. It's deeply beloved. And everyone, be sure to go to patreon.com/Kim Krizan to subscribe to the Magic Hour and unlock lessons that will inspire and improve your creative writing, as well as occasional live sessions to get advice in real time from Kim. Both monthly and annual subscriptions are offered, or you can purchase specific collections at various prices. I'll be sure to include the link in the episode description and post about it on the All the Film Things Instagram. Thank you so much for joining me, Kim. I've been a great admirer of your work for several years now, and to get a chance to talk with you about it has surely been a true highlight of this podcast. I really admire your genuine artistry and the beautiful way in which you see the world and people, as evidenced through your writing, and you've undoubtedly inspired many people both through teaching and your writing in films. That has, again, continued to resonate so deeply. I've enjoyed talking with you today, and I sincerely hope we'll have another chance to chat in the future.
I really enjoyed talking to you, Elizabeth. Thank you so much for inviting me. I really appreciate all of your warm words, and I send my best to you and to all of your listeners.
Thank you. This has been really a wonderful chat, and usually I end episodes with the same question, but I'd like to switch it up today and ask if there was a writing prompt you could leave us with that maybe people can respond to in private or share in the comments.
Oh, that's a good one. A writing prompt. Okay, I have a writing prompt for everybody. Sit down and in either a sentence or a very brief paragraph. Write down the truest thing that you can write down at the moment, whether it be something bright and optimistic or whether it be dark, whether it be skeptical, pessimistic. Just tell a truth, because, and the reason I give you this prompt is because telling a truth is really, I think, what art is about, but it's also, it is so freeing to the soul if you sit down and you write what your truth is in a given moment. It gets something off of your chest, and it frees you. And the way to do it really is in a private journal that you don't share with anybody, because sometimes truths, are may possibly feel dangerous to put down. But if you write in a private journal, you'll be able to sit down and ask yourself, what is a truth that I want to put down in a sentence or a brief paragraph, and see how that goes.
That's beautiful. I'm absolutely going to do that, and I hope everyone else does too. That's a great prompt. Thank you for leaving that with us today, and thank you again so much for joining me today, Kim.
My total pleasure. I really had a good time.
And thank you all for listening. And Kim, I think this is the beginning of a beautiful episode. Bye, everyone.
Thank you. I love that. I love that.
Special thanks to Kim Krizan, Dr. Jillian Smith, and Taylor Donaldson. This episode was recorded on January 22nd, 2026.